Marcus's argument, I assume, could be applied to any tax at all, any tax on higher incomes. We've had a progressive income tax since the start of the last century. If we want to talk about the merits of taxation or taxing the wealthy, we could certainly do that. But I don't think that that's the issue. I think that a lot of people in this country right now, in fact, a remarkable majority of Americans are in favor of Elizabeth Warren's and Bernie Sanders' proposals, which is a turnaround from what it was, let's say, 10 or 15 years ago. I remember when I was Secretary of Labor, the idea of taxing the wealth or increasing taxes on the wealthy was anathema. Most people didn't like it because they said to themselves, well, someday I may be wealthy as well, and someday my children may be wealthy, and I don't want to increase taxes on the people at the top. That has changed since the financial crisis, since the bailout of Wall Street, since a lot of people began seeing that the economy was rigged in favor of big money because big money is finding its way into politics. A lot of Americans have changed their minds, and that's why the wealth tax proposal is so popular. And again, it's not on millionaires. It's not on people of $10 million. It's 2 cents on the dollar over $50 million. And as more and more of the nation's wealth has been aggregated at the top, right now we have something brand new. We haven't seen this since the 1890s. The top one, not 1%, but the top 1/10 of 1% of Americans now has about 21% of the total nation's wealth, which is not that much different from the bottom 90% put together.
But Bob,
you just have to do something about this if you want to deal with all of the nation's problems, from infrastructure to 1 out of 5 of our nation's kids being in poverty, our schools. I mean, we have a nation, if you have any sense of patriotism, you've got to do something about the problems of this country.
Bob, part of the issue is how the wealthy got there. You argue in your recent video that 60% of wealth today is inherited. You say many of today's wealthy have never done a day's work in their lives. That number of 60% is different from every other number I've seen out there from Ed Wolf at NYU, which puts it more at 23% of inherited wealth. The billionaires list on Forbes, only about a third of them have inherited some or part of their wealth. And to say that people like Mark Zuckerberg, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Larry Ellison, all the people at the top of the list have never done a day's work in their life, it doesn't square with the reality of America being a self-made work culture.
That's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I will go back and check that 60%. But you do have a lot of heirs now. You have some very, very wealthy baby boomers who are in the midst of transferring something in the order of $30 trillion to their heirs. Now, that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that's bad. But you look at how billionaires, and we're not talking about just the garden variety billionaire. We're talking about people of tens of billions there. I mean, Warren Buffett is a nice man. He's a friend of mine. He has, about $60 billion? Each year, Warren Buffett is earning off of that $60 billion. That fortune is growing about $3 billion a year. He's not taxed on that because he doesn't realize those gains.
Bob, this is Marcus. I have 2 questions for you. Number one, I know that you didn't literally mean that people that are successful didn't work for it. So I want to clarify that for you, and you can stop me if I'm wrong in that clarification.
Well, no, let me clarify it for myself as well. I did not literally mean that people that earn X amount of money did not work for it. That's not the issue.
Glad we're clear on that. So the second issue that I have is we all agree that we need a better infrastructure for our country. We all agree that we want more into our educational system. We want more for people with opportunity. There's nobody, even the wealthiest person in America, doesn't think that that's a bad idea. I think the bad idea really comes in when you start to create this line in the sand where you're going to decide who's going to get taxed and who's not, because at some point I think you're going to move the line. Today the line's at, well, if you have $50 billion or $5 billion, and tomorrow it's going to be if it's $1 million. And at the end of the day, myself and other people that have had hard work and callous on our hands don't want to be told how to reinvest into the marketplace. And over the last 5 years, I've put $75 million of my own money into small business in this country to give people a chance. But that's my choice, not your choice, and I don't want anybody making that decision for me.
Well, I think the response to that I would give you, and a lot of other people who support a wealth tax would give you, is that we have had a progressive income tax. The whole idea of a progressive income tax is that the more money you make, the larger percentage of your earnings should be taxed. Now, you can debate that. We can start over again. That really starts out of 1901.
Right.
That was the first progressive income tax. But if you believe in a progressive income tax, then we are talking about matters of degree. I am simply saying over $50 million, 2 cents on the dollar over $50 million takes a year. That seems reasonable given our huge needs as a country and given the huge accumulations of wealth at the very top. Now, if you disagree with the progressive income tax, we can have one discussion.
Right.
If you disagree with that particular proposal, that's a slightly different discussion.
I think what I'd like to disagree with isn't the concept of the progressive income tax. It's what problem you're trying to solve and how you're trying to solve it. And ultimately, we have an infrastructure problem and we have a deficit in this country that isn't driven by the wealthy. It is true that all of us want to create some level of opportunity and equality through opportunity. I want people to work for it like I work for it. Nobody handed me anything. But it is true that progressive income tax does level the playing field to a degree. The question is, who determines it and what are you going to do with my money? Because I also want to know that if you're going to take my cash, I want a seat at the table. I want to know what we're going to be spending money on, and I want to know where the waste is. And I don't think that offers on the table either.
Marcus, I completely understand that point of view. But again, are you arguing against a progressive income tax, or are you arguing about this particular wealth tax? Because if we're arguing about a progressive income tax, we want to go back 180 years. That's perfectly fine. But that's a different kind of argument.
I want to reverse it. I want to reverse it. The progressive income tax for me isn't a problem because I have no problem giving tax breaks to people that are less fortunate or less wealthy. I have no problem with them keeping more money in their pocket. The spin isn't that we're going to give people a break. It's that we're going to penalize people who have had success. And now what's being introduced is an ultra tax on top of the progressive tax that I already have because I've come up with a great product, invented something, designed some technology that's changed humankind forever. And now you want to punish me for being entrepreneurial, for being capitalistic, for taking a chance on myself and other people. And I don't want to be penalized because the American dream is about taking a chance on people.
I understand. But these were the same exact arguments that you're giving me right now. The American dream, penalizing success. I want a seat at the table. These are the same arguments that we heard in 1901, 1902, 1903 under Franklin D. Roosevelt, under Teddy Roosevelt, even before FDR, Teddy Roosevelt, when the progressive income tax was introduced. So what is it new that you are arguing that was not argued in 1901?
The vilification of wealthy people is what I'm arguing.
That's different. I am not vilifying. I don't agree with that.
I
don't think there should be vilification of wealthy people. I think that wealthy people have, they've worked hard. I think that they are proud and should be proud American citizens. There is no reason to vilify. In 1901, they shouldn't have been vilified.
Bob,
Roosevelt should not have
vilified. One last thing before we close. Every American in this country aspires to be successful, and their definition of success would be determined differently. We don't want to put a ceiling on what defines success or penalize people to get there. I'll leave it at that.
But that's what they said in 1901. I want a new argument. We have got to understand that wages have been flat for 40 years, that a huge amount of wealth has now congregated at the top,
Bob,
and we have huge problems in this country.
Bob, we got to go, but I would love to invite you on another time. We can have this debate with you in studio, then I can hug you after.
Okay.